Welcome, everybody. It's such a pleasure to be here today at Mito. My name is Tamara Chloe Leguia, and I'm a Senior Client and Trend Success Manager at WGSN. What we're going to look at today is one of our flagship reports that we publish always 2 years in advance, and this is the Future Consumer for 2026. This presentation is the basis to everything that we do at forecasting within WGSN, and it really is the backbone to everything that we do. I'll first introduce to you our key consumer sentiments, followed by our key consumer profiles, and highlighting those key strategies on how to engage them, ultimately preparing you for the future. Before we kick things off, I want to tell you a little bit more about WGSN and who it is that we are. We are the largest trend forecasting agency in the world, constantly monitoring the signals of change that will impact how people think, feel, and ultimately behave. On screen, you get a better understanding around our investigation and the methodology that we apply. First, we start and look at the big macro drivers, investigating the STEPIC innovations, which stand for society, technology, environment, politics, industry, and creativity. We also look into these STEPIC pillars, investigating what is the sustainable imperative behind them and what are those macro drivers then later going to impact various types of industries and consumer cohorts. Here you can visualize more in depth our methodology and the different steps that we take. We start always with the observations on a global macro level. At WGSN, we operate across all regions, spanning from the US, LATAM, Asia Pacific, and Europe. We then decipher those true insights and patterns that we can see across those regions, and also enable us to trigger those emerging signals from the noise at a much more hyper-practical level. We do that through looking at data analysis, combining both qualitative and quantitative methods to translate it into what this means for the consumer and the various types of industries. Now let's kick us off with diving into 2026. 2026 is going to be the year of redirection. In the next 2 years, old ideas will be challenged. Tensions will grow both at a global and a local level as people recognize the need for urgent change in the way that we treat our societies, arrange our industries, and very importantly, work with our environment. Now, welcome to the 4 key consumer sentiments for 2026. Consumers are going to feel moral injury, the feeling of conflict that you get when you take part in behaviors that go against your own sets of morals. Rational optimism, which is all about consumers evaluating pessimism in a much more sensible and balanced manner. Yearning. Yearning is all about yearning for something better and ultimately a simpler life. And lastly, my absolute favorite, the glimmers. These are micro moments of joy, contentment, and surprise. And this one is going to be a feeling felt across all regions and cohorts. Moral injury. So, as mentioned before, moral injury is the idea where we take part in behaviors that go against our own sets of morals. People are increasingly compromising their values to fit their current living standards. An example of this can include buying fast fashion because the sustainable alternative is way too expensive. Now, this sentiment is emerging across the entire world. People are finding it ever increasingly more difficult to be able to shop sustainably. Because of the pandemic and the economic troubles, many have actually fallen below the green line of level below the green level of sustainable affordability, meaning that many cannot afford to make eco-friendly consumption choices because they are struggling financially. Now, for those people who then, on top of this, feel guilt when they do things that go against their values, data from mental health professionals has shown higher rates of depression caused because of this. But what's actually happening to those consumers that are financially secure? A return to the 2008 stealth wealth. During that global financial crisis in 2008, WGSN identified wealthness, which is an interplay between wealth and wellness. And that one has drawn a massive shift around consumer behavior. People didn't want to flash designer bags or sunglasses, but they did splurge on 1,000 euro gym memberships or even a 300 euro yoga outfit. Now, on to 2026, and something that we've been already tracking right now, consumers are going to flip their buying habits to focus much more on experiences and services. Next up, let's dive into rational optimism. Between chronic doom scrolling and an endless cycle of negative news, we need to remind ourselves that overall, by a lot of metrics, the world is actually improving. And as businesses, we have an opportunity to tap into positivity, connecting you to win over your target audience. Now, in the next couple of slides, I want to provide you with a little hope or rational optimism coming in from statistical analysis between Hans Rosling and Gapminder. On screen, you can see how there are now way fewer people in poverty across the world, or that there is actually more clean drinking water available, and an increased rate of girls finishing primary school in developing countries. Now, as you can see, adopting a positive mindset can really pay off. Being optimistic can actually add 15% to your personal lifespan. So rational optimism is going to be key to balance and offer a reality check. The next sentiment is yearning. Now, research shows that yearning is the most prominent feeling after loss. So it's understandable after the near constant state of chaos that we are feeling in this world, consumers are longing for a past that seems much more stable and simple. We can see this online with the huge number of nostalgia-focused accounts on social media. People love reflecting about the past, and on TikTok in particularly, there are many accounts where people are interviewed and shared their biggest heartbreak or what they learned from their first love that can invigorate emotive emotions to the listener. Now, according to psychologist Adam Grant, people experiencing empathetic distress feel for others, but don't actually have the ability to help them. Now, empathy fatigue will be a defining feature in the coming years. This leads people to ultimately opt out of news cycles and also social media platforms. Some consumers will respond by embracing more compassion for people and the planet, causing them to reconsider their purchases and how they spend their time online. So by 2026, consumers will be yearning for products and ways of living that really feel slower and better. Think quality over quantity. And as businesses, you will need to help them regulate those decision-making consumer emotions that may seem at times very conflicting. Consumers will not just yearn for a pause. They will move beyond those digital breaks and reevaluate their relationship with technology in much more intentional and long-term sustainable ways. Now, on to our last key consumer sentiment, the glimmers. Glimmers, as mentioned in the beginning, are micro moments of joy, contentment, and surprise. This could be hearing your favorite song, going out for a stroll when the sun comes out, and wearing your rose-tinted sunglasses. Finding inspiration in these personal and inherently achievable pleasures will be an important source of comfort and motivation for the consumers. Now, going back to 2022, we lived through the Great Resignation era, followed by quiet quitting in 2023. And come 2026, we will be looking at the Great Exhaustion, a collective feeling of fatigue, stress, and burnout. Now, according to the Future Forum Pulse survey, they found that 42% of workers across the US, Europe, Japan, France, and UK are burnt out. And on a global McKinsey survey, they reported that India has the highest rate of burnout at 59% of the total population. So leveraging glimmers is all about focusing on fulfillment and not chasing happiness. You do not need to fixate on happiness, which is actually a fleeting sentiment. Fulfillment can be a lasting state of being. An example would be to explore the meaning market, which is pushing your brand to provide consistent stability and focus on product development's purpose, with the aim to provide a little moment of joy. Now, after forecasting the consumer sentiments for 2026, we take all of this information, all of this data, and all of this research on how consumers are feeling and distill these to create our 4 distinct consumer profiles using psychographic modeling. And now let's dive into those 4 key consumer profiles for 2026. On screen, we will be looking at the impartialists, the autonomists, the gleamers, and the synergists. So the first group are the impartialists. The impartialists are fighting back against the growing crisis of disinformation, both online and in real life. And they're committed to truth-seeking and the demand for just the facts. By 2026, 90% of online content will be AI generated. The impartialists will become brand agnostic, and as such, businesses will need to implement more data transparency and streamlined paths to purchase to gain their loyalty. You can help make AI a force for good by using effective labeling to safeguard truth and transparency behind your product development. This will in turn enable the impartialists to combat the disinformation and truly understand what is human and what is AI generated. So think accurate product description.
Okay. Allora, questi saranno fondamentali e può anche ridurre i ritorni, contribuire alla fidelizzazione al marchio e permette loro di acquistare in modo sostenibile. Ora, il secondo profilo è rappresentato dagli autonomi. Gli autonomi stanno ristrutturando il loro percorso e le vecchie aspettative non sono più realistiche per loro. I costi della vita crescenti, l'iniquità salariale, tensioni politiche, questo continua a riforgiare le nostre società per i prossimi anni. E quindi pensate a questa coorte che risponde creando la loro propria serie di regole e conseguono delle pietre miliari al loro ritmo. E di base di cosa si tratta? Definire la propria età per quando si vuole ottenere delle pietre miliari, e questo non è definito dalla società o dalle norme sociali. La popolazione di giovani prevista 1,3 miliardi entro il 2030 e quindi ci saranno queste voci richieste più fresche e questa coorte è alimentata dalla responsabilità collettiva e c'è una resistenza ribelle per riguadagnare il controllo delle proprie vite, la felicità e la realizzazione. E in un mondo nel quale c'è un divario di benessere che cresce e ha sempre di più un effetto, le aziende che in modo attivo trattano la diversità, diseguaglianza e inclusione creeranno le fondamenta proprio per attirare questa demografia più giovane. Gli autonomi non vogliono perdere tempo, ma vogliono organizzazioni che effettivamente in cui si possono intraprendere delle azioni. In terzo luogo abbiamo i cosiddetti glimmer, coloro che luccicano, che trovano gioia in ogni giorno e cercano dei nuovi collegamenti familiari, ma rafforzano anche le amicizie in un mondo che è sempre più digitale. E a differenza degli autonomi che trovano realizzazioni in creazione di comunità, in grandi eventi sociali, i glimmer celebrano piccoli successi che sono noti anche come piccoli successi, piccole pietre miliari, per esempio una camminata al sole e si indossano gli occhiali ascoltando la propria musica preferita, per esempio. E poi un altro aspetto molto rilevante è il bisogno di terzi spazi, e questi sono spazi pubblici al di fuori delle scuole, delle case e anche al di fuori dei posti di lavoro dove le persone si riuniscono e questo sarà importante per coloro che vogliono instaurare dei raccordi umani più profondi. Nel 2026 ci si concentrerà di più sulla nicchia e i gruppi minoritari che sono stati trascurati.
And lastly,
In ultimo, i nostri ultimi consumatori, i sinergici. Questa corte è curiosa e vuole trarre vantaggio dalle capacità trasformative che vengono fornite dalla tecnologia. Comunque non vogliono perdere di vista il mondo fisico nel contempo
for a digital detox, and the rest of the time they want tech to be effective and efficient, adventurous online experiences that will feed both their mind and soul. So right now, there are 5.3 billion internet users in the entire world, which makes up 66% of the global population. This is important to note because the synergists are driven by making the relationship with their day-to-day lives online more equitable, but also accessible for the betterment of the human and the environment. So as AI becomes more inherently an infrastructure, the synergists will be promoting its ability to build positive solutions, both from a range of social challenges, but also for businesses within their product development. In short, they want tech to transform into the superhero for the greater good. So the real space here for businesses is the interplay between the human-tech symbiosis, working with technology, or technology working with humans, whereby machines enhance the efficiency of people, and people in turn enhance the sensing capacity and emotional cognition of machines. A perfect example are AI translation tools, which enable cross-culture communication on demand. For brands, this means more ease and less cost to localize packaging and messaging a new market. And as a result of this phenomenon, businesses are able to make all their regional branded content globally available. So, to wrap up today's presentation, it's crucial to bear in mind that the first step to creating the future is to challenge the way we think. And I'd like to challenge you today with some thought starters on the screen. These questions are designed to measure how close you are to future-proofing your business and match up to the consumer's demands. Just to highlight a few, how can you harness AI capabilities to advance your own while also allying with the consumer's anxieties? Glimmers of joy and minor stones will be necessary tools to combat pessimism in 2026. Thirdly, how are you going to pivot to become more inclusive and act upon diversity of consumers at every stage of your design development and engagement strategy? And one last question to close us off. As wealth and social disparities are increasing globally, what is your plan to build equitable future in 2026 and beyond? Thank you so much for joining today's presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to email me or come and speak to me afterwards.